Imagine booking an Airbnb for a relaxing getaway, but the moment you step inside, things start to feel off. Hidden cameras, strange noises in the middle of the night, and cryptic messages from the host. These aren't just stories, they're real-life nightmares experienced by people just like us. Get ready, because what you're about to hear tonight will make you think twice before booking your next stay. I never thought this trip to Kauai would leave a memory I'd never forget. I was with a group of friends, and we had rented an Airbnb in a somewhat secluded area, surrounded by dense trees and the sounds of nature creeping into every corner. From the moment we entered, I felt something strange, but I wasn't sure if it was just travel anxiety or something darker lingering in that place. As night fell, the atmosphere became even stranger. The apartment was eerily quiet, as if the air itself refused to move. I lay on my bed near the bathroom door with the lights off except for a faint glow seeping through the curtains from outside. A heavy sensation settled in my chest, the same feeling that precedes sleep paralysis. I tried to ignore it, but when I turned toward the corner, my heart nearly stopped. There, just a foot away, stood a tall woman, completely silent, staring at me with deep, hollow eyes that resembled an endless void. Her skin was pale gray, as if life had been drained from it, and her long black hair hung unnaturally, almost floating in the air. Something was off about the way she stood, her back slightly hunched forward, as if preparing to lunge at me. I couldn't scream. It felt as if the air was being pulled from my lungs, as if I were drowning in thick darkness with no escape. The woman moved slightly forward, and that alone was enough to trigger every survival alarm in my brain. I jumped from my bed, gasping for breath, and when I blinked, she was gone. But the horror didn't end there. Every time I tried to sleep, I felt a heavy presence in the room, something lurking in the shadows, watching. The feeling was suffocating, as if the air was thick with something unseen but overwhelmingly strong. And when I finally managed to sleep, I drifted into a series of interconnected nightmares, all centered around something sinister inhabiting the room. In one dream, I was lying in bed, and when I turned, I saw my sister sleeping beside me. The problem? My sister wasn't on this trip. The moment I realized this, her eyes widened slowly, her facial features twisting into something inhuman, as if the flesh itself was shrinking to reveal a blackened skull beneath. I screamed in the dream, trying to run, but the room seemed to stretch endlessly, the door getting farther away with every step. I woke up, but the terror didn't end. I heard faint knocks, 3 slow, deliberate taps, coming from inside the room or just outside. The sound was steady, rhythmic, like an omen announcing the presence of something waiting in the darkness. I tried to drown it out with my headphones, listening to something on YouTube, but the feeling of unease never left me until morning. By evening, the apartment felt even heavier, as if the air itself carried an unspoken warning. I hadn't told my friends about my experience the night before, but I could see that they, too, felt uneasy. After dinner, while we were chatting, a loud alarm suddenly blared inside the Airbnb. We all jumped from our seats, and it didn't take long to trace the sound. It was coming from the attic. Despite my fear, no one else was willing to go up and check. I climbed the creaky wooden ladder leading to the attic, each step groaning under my weight like breaking bones. The attic was unnaturally dark, even with my flashlight. It was as if the shadows themselves clung to the walls, resisting illumination. In the corner of the room, an old alarm clock was ringing. I hesitated to touch it, but the noise wouldn't stop. When I picked it up, it felt unnervingly cold, as if it had been sitting in a place untouched by warmth. I unplugged it, but even then the echo of the alarm seemed to linger in my ears, like it was part of the house itself. When I came down, we saw that it was late, and we decided to go out for dinner. One of the group members stayed behind to rest. When we returned, everything seemed normal, but her face was unusually pale. In a trembling voice, she told us, "I kept waking up all night. I thought I saw a man standing at the open balcony door, just standing there, staring at the foot of my bed. I tried convincing myself it was just my imagination, but every time I opened my eyes, he was still there. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe too loudly. It felt like something was waiting for me to make the wrong move." We exchanged glances, but no words were needed. We all knew this apartment was not normal, that something was watching us, toying with our dreams, filling the night with things beyond explanation. The next night, we left the apartment earlier than planned. No one said the real reason out loud, but we all understood. And now, even days after returning home, the weight of that place still lingers. I still wake up sometimes, hearing those 3 knocks echoing in the darkness. On a sunny morning, my 8-year-old daughter and I decided to take a break from our daily routine. Our trip to Virginia had been planned in advance, and we chose to book through Airbnb. We settled on an apartment that seemed perfect, isolated and quiet, nestled in a remote area surrounded by dense forests and vast lands. The booking was for 6 nights, but we had no idea these 6 days would feel like the longest of our lives. When we arrived, the host greeted us with a wide, friendly smile. Her calm demeanor and reassuring gestures reminded me of the quintessential Southern hospitality you see in movies. She sat on an old couch by the entrance, blending into the strange atmosphere of the place as if she were part of it. But the moment we stepped inside the apartment, I felt something odd. The air itself felt heavy, charged with an invisible tension, like it was watching us. The host welcomed us and gave me the door code, a sequence of 7 numbers. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal, but soon I realized the code was nearly impossible to remember. It was like the numbers faded from my memory the moment I tried to recall them. After several failed attempts, I ended up locking us out while unloading our luggage. I had no choice but to walk over to the host's house and ask for the code again. At that moment, a strange unease settled in my chest, but I tried to brush off the unsettling thoughts. The host was sitting in her old wooden chair and started asking strange questions. Her words were directed only at my daughter, even though I was the adult in the room. I was expected to stay silent. It felt like she was testing something or closely observing us. The questions didn't seem normal. She asked my daughter things no stranger should ask a child. When I tried to answer on my daughter's behalf, I noticed a strange gleam in the host's eyes, like something lurking in the shadows. Then she told us something that sent a chill down my spine. She insisted we keep the curtains closed, even though the place seemed perfectly safe. There were no nearby houses, just forests and vast, empty land. Why would she mention that? Why was she so specific, saying, "Because you're 2 girls"? When we returned to the apartment, I felt fluctuations in the atmosphere, like something invisible surrounded us. That first night, we started hearing strange noises, what sounded like a large, hard-shelled insect flying around the separate room in the bedroom. The noise came and went at odd times, speeding up and slowing down in unnatural rhythms. But I was too exhausted after the long trip to give it much thought at first. However, over time, those sounds started gnawing at my nerves. On the second night, the bathroom on the 2nd floor began making metallic noises. The sounds grew louder and faster, like something heavy was moving inside the walls. I tried convincing myself it was just normal house noises, or maybe I was still fatigued from the journey, but the anxiety began to seep into me. My daughter was asleep in her bed, but I couldn't close my eyes. Everything about this place felt off. The next morning, I discovered something even stranger. The fan I had left running was turned off, as if someone had deliberately switched it off. That was odd because neither of us had touched it. When I went into the bathroom, I noticed that the only mirror in the place had been moved. The adjustable mirror had been tilted downward, directly at child level. At first, I thought my daughter had moved it, but when I adjusted it back the next day, it tilted down again when I wasn't looking. These small, inexplicable movements were slowly intensifying my unease. By the 3rd day, things grew even weirder. I started feeling like we were being watched. That night, it became undeniable. I was in the bathroom while my daughter was coloring downstairs when she suddenly said in a soft voice, "Mom, I'm going to close the bathroom door so the bugs can't watch me." My daughter was always playful and fearless about being alone in the bathroom. But that day was different. There was something in the air, something that unsettled her. I could feel it too, though she didn't have the words to explain it. As I prepared for bed that night, the noises started again, faster and more intense than before. The metallic sounds in the bathroom grew louder and more frantic. It felt like something was thrashing inside the walls, as if an invisible force was messing with the things in the room. I heard what sounded like someone shuffling objects on the bathroom counter, and then it seemed like a glass had fallen to the floor. My senses were on high alert, and it felt like I was living through a never-ending nightmare. Then I heard another sound, the closet door across from the bed creaking open slowly. But my luggage was in the way, making it impossible for the door to open naturally. With every noise, my fear escalated. The overwhelming sense of dread seeped into my bones, like something beyond explanation was surrounding us. The next morning, everything came to a head. When I went into the bathroom, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. There were muddy footprints, small ones like those of a child, leading out of the bathroom onto a white towel placed in front of the door. They hadn't been there the night before, and there was no mud anywhere near the apartment. How did those footprints get there? Who or what left them? In that moment, I realized we were not alone. I couldn't stay in that place another second. I decided we had to leave immediately, even if it meant leaving everything behind. I packed our bags as fast as I could, telling myself, we are never coming back here. After we left, the host tried contacting me several times. She even offered us a free night, but I wanted nothing to do with her or that cursed place. I declined her offer and decided I would never use Airbnb again. That experience was so terrifying, it has etched itself into my memory forever. The night that never ends. First, I want to say that nothing like this had ever happened to me or my friend before. We never believed in ghost stories or tales of haunted houses. We always thought they were just myths, made up to entertain or scare children. But after that night, we were never the same. We never saw the world the same way again. What happened wasn't just paranoia or the effects of the drug. It was something deeper, older, and far darker than we could comprehend. We arrived at the apartment late in the evening. The air was strangely cold for a summer night. The house was old, built decades ago, maybe even over a century. The wooden walls felt damp, as if they were breathing slowly. The windows were covered in a thick layer of dust, distorting the view outside, making it seem as though the world beyond this place no longer existed. The apartment sat directly on the banks of the St. Mary's River in Sault Ste. Marie. The sight of the water at night was mesmerizing, yet unsettling, endless and dark like a bottomless abyss. As soon as we stepped inside, an overwhelming scent hit us. A mix of damp wood, old books, and something else. Something indescribable, but undeniably present. It was heavy, suffocating, like the lingering scent of death that had never truly faded. The apartment was completely empty, yet we never felt alone. There was a weight in the air, a presence lurking in the shadows, watching from the corners. The night started normally. We went out to get some food, returned, and played Monopoly in the living room, laughing as if there was nothing unusual surrounding us. Later, we went for a quick swim in the cold river water. It was refreshing, but there was an eerie feeling beneath the surface, like the water itself didn't want us there. Once night had fully settled in, we decided to smoke some weed before dinner. We returned inside, ate our food, then went to the master bedroom. I was lying on the bed, scrolling through my phone while my friend sat beside me. That was when it started. The ceiling fan light flickered. It wasn't just turning on and off. It pulsed, irregular and erratic, like something was toying with it. "The house is old," I muttered, more to convince myself than him. But he didn't respond. He just stared at the light, eyes wide, like he was seeing something I couldn't. Then, in a low, almost whispering voice, he said, "Something's wrong. You feel it, don't you?" I didn't like his tone. It wasn't normal anxiety. It was fear, deep, raw fear. I looked at him and his face was pale, his breathing shallow. He looked like he was seeing a nightmare while fully awake. I tried to joke, "You're just paranoid from the weed, relax." But he didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. He just said, "No, this is different." I stood up, thinking maybe changing rooms would help shake off this feeling. I walked into the hallway, heading toward the living room. My friend followed silently. The air felt heavier here, thicker, harder to breathe. I stood still, scanning the dimly lit space. Nothing. just the usual darkness pooling in the corners. But when I turned to my friend, I found him staring at the bedroom door. "What's wrong?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, after a long pause, he whispered, "I swear I just saw the light in that room turn on and off." A chill ran down my spine. I wasn't afraid of ghosts or unseen entities, but the idea that there could be someone else in the house with us, that terrified me. "We should check," I said, forcing a false confidence into my voice. We slowly opened the door, my heart pounding. The room was just as we left it. Nothing seemed out of place, but my friend wasn't looking at the bed or the furniture. He was staring at the closet. "What?" I asked. His voice was hoarse when he answered, "That door, it just slammed shut against the wall." I wanted to tell him that was impossible, that he was just imagining things, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. We went back to the living room, and my friend was visibly shaken. He said, "I have a terrible feeling. Something awful is going to happen if we stay here. We need to leave." I hesitated. We had nowhere else to go until the next morning. So I suggested, "Let's take a drive. If you still feel the same when we get back, we'll leave." We got in the car and drove around for a while, but when we returned, everything was worse. When we entered the bedroom to grab our things, we saw it. The ceiling fan was moving, even though the switch was off. It wasn't spinning normally. It was jerking, shuddering, as if something unseen was pushing it violently, then stopping, then pushing it again. My friend was trembling, his face drenched in sweat. He whispered, "This thing, it wants us out." We rushed to the kitchen to wash the dishes before leaving. It was a requirement before checking out. That's when something happened that changed everything. My friend reached into a drawer and pulled out the biggest knife inside. He stood there, staring at it. Then he turned and looked at me. His expression was blank, his eyes empty. He didn't say a word. Just held it for a moment, then put it back and closed the drawer. "What was that?" I asked, my voice shaking. He didn't answer. He just said, "I'll tell you in the car." We packed up, locked the house behind us, and sped off down the road. As soon as we were far enough away, I demanded, "What happened back there? What were you doing in the kitchen?" He took a deep breath, his hands gripping the wheel tightly. Then, in a dead, hollow voice, he said, "It was talking to me, the whole time. When I reached for the knife, it took over me. It told me to hurt you." My stomach twisted in fear. I felt like I was going to be sick. He continued, his voice almost detached from reality. It kept whispering things. "Do this. Throw the chair at her. Hurt her." The voice was so clear, and for a moment, I almost did it. He paused. Then, almost in a whisper, he said, "And the worst part, it liked the idea." That night, we slept in the car, but neither of us really slept, and we were never the same again. Since I decided to travel to Prague, this visit felt different from any other. In the past, I always rented apartments through platforms like Airbnb, but this time I had a strange feeling that something awaited me here, in this ancient city rich with history. However, this feeling only grew more mysterious when I arrived at the apartment at the end of October. My apartment was located in a very old neighborhood, and the building itself groaned under the weight of time. The walls were slightly dirty, with dark corners barely visible unless the light hit them at a certain angle. At first, I didn't notice anything strange. I thought I was just feeling tense from the travel, but soon enough, things started to take a different turn. There were small details that raised suspicions. The lemon I bought for cooking turned green within 72 hours. Maybe it was just a bad batch of lemons, but when I read the article my cousin sent me about using lemons to detect negative energy, I started feeling like something unusual was happening. Still, I tried to convince myself that it was just a coincidence. But as time passed, the atmosphere around me grew heavier. One day, I was standing in the bathroom waiting for the shower to heat up. There was something strange in the air, something uncomfortable, as though the place was watching me. The water was flowing quietly but steadily when suddenly, something happened that I never expected. From the shower head, a massive black lump fell the size of a grapefruit. It landed on the floor with a loud thud, as if it was made of ice breaking upon impact. But what happened next was even stranger. The lump quickly transformed into black liquid and rushed down the drain as though it had melted into the ground. I felt a chill run down my spine. That wasn't just a lump, it was something else, something unnatural, but I couldn't explain what was happening. Then one evening, while I was lying in bed reading on my phone, something else happened. The light in the room was dim, and I was in a state of complete relaxation when suddenly I looked up from my iPad and saw something strange. Thick white fog flowing across the room, flying before my eyes as though it was moving at the speed of light. This wasn't just regular fog, it carried a certain dense darkness within it, as if something was watching me through it. Everything moved quickly, and each second felt like an eternity, while the fog passed overhead and disappeared just as quickly as it came. Then something inexplicable occurred. While I was struggling to understand what was happening, I felt something heavy pressing on my heart. It was something strange, something I couldn't identify just yet. As I continued watching the fog, I felt an invisible presence hovering above my bed. Another phenomenon began to appear, even more astonishing. Massive white wings gently fluttering in the air, gliding across the room as though they had never been there at all. The wings were beautiful, but the atmosphere around them was filled with strangeness. The feathers were soft, and every detail was strikingly bright, but I couldn't figure out their source. They flapped gently, then suddenly rose to the ceiling, disappearing into the shadows. I was exhausted, unable to think clearly. But one thing was for sure, something strange was happening here. It felt as though I was living in a chaotic world of illusions, between what was real and what wasn't. As time passed, I discovered something else, a locked room in the apartment. The door was very old, with a long, ancient-looking lock. The key wouldn't open it. It had a sign on it that said, "Private." My curiosity got the best of me, and I peered through the keyhole. Light was streaming from inside the room, and it was unusually bright, as though there was a window inside, despite being on the upper floor where no outside light could reach. At first, I thought the owners used it for storage, but as I looked closer, I realized it was a children's room. The bunk beds were neatly made, and there was old furniture scattered on the floor. This discovery disturbed me deeply. I began wondering if something traumatic had happened here with the children, or if the place was hiding a secret that couldn't be explained. What was going on in this apartment? Were these experiences related to its dark history? Finally, with all these strange events, I discovered something else. I was pregnant. I couldn't believe it at first. After years of trying and multiple miscarriages, after many attempts to seek fertility treatment in Prague, here I was, finally discovering I was pregnant. But this also brought fear. Would this pregnancy last, or would I face the same fate as before? These were some of the scariest Airbnb horror stories. After hearing these terrifying experiences, do you still dare to book a stay? Let me know in the comments if you've ever had a strange experience while staying somewhere. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more creepy stories. See you in the next video. And remember, not everything that seems safe actually is.